Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Women's Soccer. I'm your host Jeff Kassouf along with co-host Cat Whitehill here. A lot going on in women's soccer. Pretty busy week, huh Cat?
Very busy. Still not over.
Yeah, still not over. A lot left to talk about at the end of this week here, post-show, and we're going to try and continue to bring you reaction as things happen. But national team players have not been allocated to teams as of yet. That's coming extremely shortly, within 24 hours of you watching this show. But they have been identified of who's in, who's out, and it's mostly everybody in that we thought. Ballon d'Or, we've got your winner. It's Abby Wambach. We'll see what, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Was that good? Was that, should it have been Morgan? We'll get to that second place voting. And then we're going to talk a lot of college soccer here because NWSL draft is closing down on us Friday, January 18th, just about a week from now. And we have ESPN's Graham Hayes on today, who is, when I need to know something about women's college soccer, I usually, or almost always, go search out his stuff on ESPN and ESPNW to make sure that, because he's got a ton of great stuff, and he's knows far more than most anybody, I'd say, on the topic. So first, let's dive into Ballon d'Or. Cat, Abby Wambach wins. I can't remember because we're on a little holiday break there. Did you have her as your Ballon d'Or, or was it Alex Morgan?
I had Alex.
Okay. I did too as well, but like I was saying the whole time, I think it was really a toss-up. I don't think I could have been, outraged by either. I thought that Alex maybe had a little bit better of a year, but good for Abby, would you say? I mean, she's had so many great years that haven't necessarily been rewarded in this way.
Yeah, I think that, now looking at the winner compared to Alex Morgan, Alex, in my opinion, had a better year statistically speaking. But if you look at Abby's, body of work throughout her career, it was definitely a well-deserved award on her part, because there have been a lot of years it's been overlooked, especially with, it's always been either Birgit Prinz or Marta for a long time. And it's amazing to me that Abby, really, this is the first time that she's been up there in the top three. And so I do think that it was well-deserved on her part. And I'm very, very happy for her. I'm glad that the U.S. brought another one home. It's been way too long since we had a U.S. player win it. So I was very happy.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy to think. I mean, Mia Hamm being the last and the only U.S. player, and part of that, I guess, I think there's always an asterisk with that, because the award for the women started so late. I mean, I think if we had this award in the 90s, it would have just been a Michelle Akers, Mia, Michelle Akers, maybe Chris Lilly. I mean, I think it would have just been a 10-year run for the U.S. with maybe a German sprinkled in or something. I think it's good for Abby. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to argue with, and rightfully so, that it's not a lifetime award. It's a "What'd you do for me this year" award. But there's no denying that name plays a huge part in this, because you look at it, and personally, I mean, she didn't win it, so there's no reason to call out everybody on earth. But Marta finishing second to me is just absurd. I mean, Alex Morgan barely going into third with the way that the votes shaked out, and there was just a lot of strange voting. I mean, and actually I got to credit Dan Laletta here from Equalizer. He was telling me, I didn't really, I saw it, but it just didn't register with me 100%. Well, why is John Herdman, coach of Canada, he finished sixth? I mean,
yeah, I saw you tweet that. I couldn't believe it. He should have been in the top three. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, I don't know what happened with the Canadian outrage, but they got two people completely shafted when it comes to both awards.
Yeah, some people were speculating that sort of everything that happened after that semifinal with Sinclair and basically the whole team. I mean, Herdman even had some strong comments that maybe that hurt. But I don't know, because the voting is captain, coach, and media from each country, and I don't know about captains and coaches, but I mean, I didn't hold that against them. Not that I voted officially, but it's not like FIFA themselves. It's not like Sepp Blatter sat down and said, John Herdman's finished in 6th. So I don't know if that hurt them or what. But Peterson Haga, pretty rightfully and I don't think surprisingly took the coaching award. And she sang again. She had to go out on a song, right? But,
I heard that she did that. I didn't see her speech. I saw Abby's, but I didn't see hers. So
yeah,
lots of comments on it though. That's for sure.
she had a few songs. They interviewed her again afterward. I mean, that's Pia though. So we'll see if she can. Maybe she'll go back to back and win it again as Swedish coach. I don't know, but so Ballon d'Or goes to Abby Wambach. Which is definitely great for her, and I think Alex Morgan will have plenty more years to win it, and maybe go on a Marta-esque kind of run herself of winning a few straight, and Marta won 5 straight, obviously. So good for Abby. Congratulations to her. And now we know, and she actually sort of dropped this news in Zurich at this. This was the first time we'd really officially heard anything this definitive, that the U.S. women's national team was playing in the NWSL, as Abby and then the U.S. are on behind me here, and she's accepting her award shortly. NWSL, all 18 U.S. Olympic gold medalists from 2012 are being allocated. They're committed to the league. USSF is funding them. That is 23 players for the U.S. We'll get to that in a second. And then 16 for Canada, 16 for Mexico. 23, it was supposed to be up to 24. I think a lot of people are missing this point, and wondering why is this happening, that there's one less. And it is going to cause a problem. Whoever only gets those 2 players is going to have some serious gripe, and rightfully so. But it was up to 24. Megan Klingenberg opted to go to Sweden. She would have been the 24th, and they just didn't fill it at this point. It could still be filled. With who is the question. But
that, or they just give that team the first round draft pick.
That could be, yeah. They got to figure something out. I mean, I know that I think it's going to be more of a monetary thing, like that they'll have another salary covered. But that's not official. But I think that's kind of the direction they're going. But what do you think of the allocated players, Kat? I mean, specifically the 23 from the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there weren't a whole lot of surprises. The main one that really stuck out to me was actually Keelan Winters. I think she's a fantastic player. She's one of those midfielders that definitely has potential of making the national team one day. She came into a couple of camps with the national team, but never made a roster, wasn't an Olympic alternate like Klingenberg and Kristen Press were, and Lori Lindsay. And I guess I was just a little bit surprised that she is one of the players they put on the list to allocate. And like you just explained, it doesn't have to be 24 players. It's up to 24. And I don't know of a replacement. I don't know if Kristen Press also opted out since she did sign in Sweden. But, in my opinion, I would not have put her on there, just because I think she's only been in maybe 3 camps, something like that, not too many camps. And it was just very, very interesting to me. Nothing against her as a player. I just thought it was very interesting when it came to allocation. I thought that she would be, one of those first free agents that would have been picked up. But, I just found it all very, very interesting that she was on that list. I mean, she, without a doubt, was just stood out like that to me. I thought that was very, very interesting.
Well, I was wondering what direction they were going to go here, because you knew pretty much, assuming that everybody was committed from the Olympic team, that they were going to get those 18 slots. But I was thinking, even though she's a college senior or coming into this draft class, that a player like a Christy Mewis might be worth investing in that allocation spot, in the sense that, I mean, Sermani loves young players. We saw that with Australia. And this is all about, nobody's making any secret about this league being about building specifically the U.S. and then Canada secondary, and Mexico, I think, will benefit the most, actually, as a third candidate of developing this for these teams for 2015 at the World Cup. So to me, if that's the case, then a Mewis should be in there, and really maybe a couple younger players. I mean, do you even give a Nairn? I mean, she's had the youth national team experience and some limited, she's at the camps and that. Do you give those players those allocation spots with those kind of extra ones? I mean, you have an extra one now. And Mexico did it with Alina Garcia Mendez. She's not going in the draft. She's an allocated player, even though she's a college senior coming out. So I was wondering how they would handle that, and they kind of basically those 23 are 23 that have been in the mix and probably deserve it. But I was just, it was going to be interesting to see if they were going to go with that route of a couple younger sort of U23s that might deserve it. But the other main surprise, I guess, from Canada, Melissa Tancredi not playing this year. She's working on schooling. She's finishing up schooling, so she will not play with a club. She's still involved in the program. She's still a part of their plans, and she wants to play next year. So we'll see how that works, because they used all 16 allocation spots. I don't know if somebody gets told next year they don't have a contract anymore. But we'll talk about allocation a lot more when these players actually get teams, which is very shortly. Right now it's just kind of a list, and you can check that out. We'll put up a link to it under the video here and on the page. So when these players actually get teams, I think is when we'll have a lot more to talk about, Kat. But for now, we're going to shift to NWSL draft with Graham Hayes, as we said before, joining us from ESPN. Thank you so much to Graham, and we will have that after the break. Stick with us on This Week in Women's Soccer. All right, everybody, thanks for staying with us here on This Week in Women's Soccer, here with Cat Whitehill, and we've got a special guest on the phone from ESPN, women's college soccer aficionado, Graham Hayes. Graham, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Jeff. How are you guys doing over there?
I'm good. How about you, Kat?
I'm good.
Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. NWSL draft time is bearing down on us, and no better person to bring in to chat a little bit about the draft. First draft of the year, or first draft of this league, I should say. How do you think that this sort of landscape shakes out with these young players? How does this group compare to other groups in the past, even last year's crop of graduating players?
I think, when you look at it, it's not on the surface the deepest of draft classes that we've seen over the past few years, which probably hurts it some, kind of coming in at the start of the league. They're going to get overshadowed a little bit, perhaps. But there's depth there, I think, in this class, but there's not kind of that high end, the top end talent. Certainly not the top end striker like we've seen in the past few years with a Lauren Cheney or an Alex Morgan or Sydney Leroux.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's still sort of those top end players, though, wouldn't you say, with Christine Nairn and you've got Crystal Dunn, or Christine Nairn, excuse me, but the top. What about that top sort of five or so? Is that still, are those players that you think could step right in?
Yeah, that top half of the first round, certainly maybe even the whole first round. I think there is depth there in the midfield and in defense, even with, as you mentioned, Amber Brooks. Obviously, her situation in Germany is going to confuse things a little bit, perhaps. But with her and Nairn and Mewis, and you got Rachel Kwan in there, and A.D. French if a team wants a keeper that early. So I think there are players up there at the top of that first round that can come in and make a pretty immediate contribution. Certainly.
That was going to be my question, actually, about French. In my opinion, she's the best prospect coming out for the draft. I think that she's been the most consistent, and with goalkeepers, just really, really difficult to come by. In my opinion, if I were the first pick, I would take her. Who would you take over someone like an AD French? Because she is just premiered, in my opinion.
Right. It's hard too right now because we don't know who's all these rosters are just kind of blank slates right now. So it's hard to know if the team picking first is going to have an established keeper or not, or when we get there. But if you have a team up there with one of those first couple of picks that doesn't get one of those top allocated keepers, I think France certainly has to figure in the mix, just because she is far and away the best keeper in this class. And even looking down the road when you've got Weiss coming out next year, Aubrey Bledsoe coming out next year, or Emily Oliver in a couple of years. Even against those kind of players, Branch kind of has that edge or that top end talent. So if a team picking in one of those first few spots needs a keeper, I think she's certainly in play.
Well, Franch to me is one of those keepers because everybody's asking, with the whole Hope Solo situation, everybody's asking, well, who would take a Hope's place if, the new coach, Tom Sermani, decided not to take Hope on his roster for reasons other than soccer. And to me, I think that Franch is in the top 2 candidates to replace someone like a Hope because of the kind of talent and athleticism that she has and her kind of demeanor in the goal mouth. I mean, what do you think about her as someone, as a predecessor to Hope?
I think that makes sense to me. I mean, that's a spot that's not certainly nailed down by anyone right now. If we look at her at Branch, I think she maybe got lost a little bit in the shuffle this year just because Oklahoma State took kind of a step back and she didn't have the back line in front of her that she'd had in past years and just kind of had a little more on her shoulders. I think people kind of maybe overlooked her a little bit. But as you're saying, I totally agree. I mean, she's got everything you would want in a keeper, from the physical skills to the demeanor, just the size. She's that whole package.
Graham, when you look at this class, you mentioned a point that I wanted to touch on with there's such a clean slate for all these teams. As of today, these players will be allocated, these national team players, but as of today, there's not a single player on a team officially as of yet. How much harder is it going to be for a player, especially not in that first really solid crop of players, to crack into a team here?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I think in terms of there will be situations where it'll be harder just because you're drafting a player who might otherwise make a roster, but happens to land on a roster that ends up with 3 or 4 players in her position, ahead of her on the chart. But you're also going to get players who maybe wouldn't make other rosters, who are going to get opportunities just because they end up on a team that has a need at that position, kind of serendipitously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the interesting point to me you brought up as well, and I was thinking about this yesterday. We talked about it, Kat and I, briefly earlier, that Amber Brooks going to Germany. Last year we saw how Sarah Hagen and Ingrid Wells were drafted even though it was known that they weren't going to be there immediately and they might not ever be there, but coaches were willing to take that risk on them because they had a team in place and it was worth the risk because it was such a good player. But Amber Brooks now, you don't have anybody on your roster. Is she that good that she's worth a first or second round pick when you have nobody on your team, and she might not ever come to your team, but you can at least grab her rights?
It's tough, and I was thinking about that this morning, actually, just in terms of it not being the deepest draft. So I'm not sure if that makes it a better option, to risk a pick on her early because you feel like you aren't necessarily losing a great player that you might otherwise take if you take Brooks and kind of stash her away, or if you feel like that there is such a finite amount of talent in this class that you can't really afford to use that pick on a player who you're not going to have right away. So I'm honestly not sure what the right answer there is for her.
When you talk about the depth, how it's not as deep as other drafts, can you name? Each team gets 4 players. Could you name possible players that no one is, as familiar with on other teams that you could think of that would go to a team?
You mean late in the draft?
Yeah.
It's tough. You're kind of basing it on gut instinct at that point. One player who I don't hear a lot about, who I haven't seen in a lot of kind of the mock drafts and projections that I really like and I think could fit in that 4th round or free agent area, is Carly Davis from Baylor. And I think you called one of her games, Kat, when they were at Oklahoma State. Just a really solid fullback for a really good Baylor team, and not a flashy player, not a player who's really going to get forward like a Quan out of Stanford, but she's just a very solid defender. Played last summer for the Colorado Rush, I think, at a very high level. She's one of those players I think could fit in late in the draft or even after the draft. I think those are the kind of players you're going to have to look for in those situations, players who aren't going to be stars. They're never going to be great players down the road, but they do have one skill or two skills that could make them fit in as a kind of a role player down the road.
Yeah, and it helps that Marcy Miller-Jobson was her coach, so she can kind of help prepare her for the possibility of going to a league.
Yeah, absolutely. She's got great coaching there at Baylor.
Yeah.
Graham, we're talking about the depth of this class. There have been some very good ones, at least in WPS in the recent past. What would you say is sort of that best group? I mean, to me, that 2010 draft really stands out. What would you say is the best sort of crop that's come through?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you there. And the 2010 class, the first round was more or less pretty solid all the way through, and then kind of even going beyond that, there was depth in that class with somebody like I think Jordan Angeli was a second round pick maybe that year, and there were players in that draft who you could find in the second round or even the third or fourth round that could make a difference moving forward, and that's the depth that maybe we haven't seen in the past couple of years. Okay,
and the big question, I got to put you on the spot here. So you're a team going into this draft who I think, from what we can tell, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kat, that they'll only have their national team players at this point. They won't have free agents going into the draft, or they'll probably have it maybe verbally.
They have ideas of free agents.
Yeah. But no actual free agents signed probably at that point, but right. Probably sort of under the table signed. But almost a clean slate other than sort of those national team players at that point. If you're a team in that situation, you're probably in a best available player sort of mode. Who's you got the first pick, Graham, and maybe if that's too easy, you got the second pick too. Who are you taking with that sort of best available situation?
I think probably if you don't end up with one of those keepers, or if you do end up with a keeper that you feel pretty good about, so maybe France isn't as much in the conversation at that point, and with Brooks going to Germany, I think those top two players that really you're looking at are Nairn and Mewis, kind of those midfield attacking options.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't know the order yet. That's got to be that obviously has to be figured out very soon. But yeah, both of those. I mean, obviously a bit of I don't know if you can call them a no-brainer, but that's probably has to be done. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think, like you said, with the keepers, the thing with the keepers is with 8 keepers being allocated, the two Mexican keepers I think are going to be more of an unknown or might not be automatic starters like Hope and Barnhart and Lloyden. So there might be some people have to figure out their goalkeeping situation from the draft or free agency. But so last quick thing from you, Graham. I don't know if we should say quick because we don't want to just totally overlook this, but Friday night is Mac Herman Trophy night, and we've got Crystal Dunn from UNC, Carolyn Miller from Virginia, and Christine Nairn from Penn State. Who do you think's winning it, and who should win it, Graham?
Wow. My hunch is that Crystal Dunn will win it, just from the momentum she kind of picked up coming off the U20s all the way through the postseason. And I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. I think we saw at the end of the season that she probably was the best college player, on the field. I think if I was voting, I would probably vote for Nairn, just because the body of work over the whole course of the season. I mean, she really kind of carried that out. There was a lot of talent on the Penn State team, but she played a huge role with that offense without Maya Hayes, without Taylor Schramm early in the season because of the U20s, and kept up that pace pretty well throughout the postseason, got them to the College Cup. Really showed that Penn State wasn't the team it had been in past postseasons, where always seemed to find a way to lose early. So I think if you're doing it on that whole body of work, I would vote for Nairn. I think just because of what Dunn was able to do once she got back, and because Carolina won, and because it is Carolina, she'll end up winning, and that's not a bad decision at all.
All right. Well, we will find out Friday night by about 6 p.m. Central, I guess. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to the draft. Thanks so much for coming on, Graham. Really appreciate it. It's good to get some real good draft insight from the expert here. So it was good to have you. Thanks.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
All right, Graham Graham Hayes, everybody. Sorry about that, Graham. From ESPN, who is the women's soccer expert and some women's basketball too, yeah?
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you again to Graham Hayes. Thinking of Crystal Dunn as I was trying to send him off. I was trying to, I don't know why, but I called him Graham Dunn. But sorry about that, Graham. I think I was mainly thinking, why the heck did I try to call Crystal Dunn a senior at the beginning of that segment for about 2 seconds there? But quickly corrected myself, thankfully, Kat. I don't want to offend anything to do with the Tar Heels. I know that.
That's right. I would have corrected you otherwise.
You're probably ready to jump on me when I said that.
We need her one more year at UNC. We'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, she could probably do pretty well, get drafted pretty high in this draft as it is, but she can finish up school. Finish up school, kids. Allocation, we're going to find out very shortly. Well, you have any random predictions? I mean, I'm not big on sort of mock allocations because I think it's like pulling it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack of who's going there because there's so many options. But you think anybody will end up in a surprising place or?
I think it's going to be really interesting because there's so many West Coast players, and a lot of them probably wanted the Portland, Seattle teams, and not everybody's going to get it. So you know that not everybody's going to get their number one choice. I asked Heather O'Reilly, I said, does a lot of it have to do with caps? And she said not necessarily. So it will be very interesting to find out, like where everybody's going. And, it doesn't mean if you only have, 10 caps that you're the last one on the totem pole. So I have no idea, I think each team will get a stud of a player. I mean, if you look at it geographically, I know a lot of people say like something like a Kansas City is a hard one because there's not a lot of people, that are nearby. But think about Becky Sauerbrunn. Her family's from St. Louis. So that's definitely, a possibility if they can get Becky Sauerbrunn. I mean, right there, that's, in my opinion, one of the best defenders that the U.S. has and possibly in the world. I just think she's incredible. So, it's going to be very, very interesting, and I'm excited to kind of see what plays out tomorrow.
Yeah, it should be exciting. We'll find out on Friday, and we'll have a little reaction here for you. And we want to hear your reaction too. I'd love to hear your reaction. You can tweet at us and email us, and we got the Facebook page up too. We should be using that more. So let us know what you think out of it, and we'll see. It should be interesting. I think there will be a cornerstone for each franchise, like you said, and I think my interest is going to be who only gets the 2 U.S. players, because they're going to feel screwed and they're going to let everybody know about it. And if they struggle in the standings, this and that, then we're going to hear about it, I think. But we'll figure that out as we go. So allocation Friday. Thanks to Graham Hayes again. NWSL draft next Friday. Busy times coming up, and free agents too. We're talking to Kat here. Free agents got to get signed very shortly too. And that's surely going on with talks and all that already, but we don't know when that'll officially start happening. So till next week, and really actually not next week, because we're gonna have a little allocation coverage for you. Until very shortly, this has been This Week in Women's Soccer with Cat Whitehill and Graham Hayes. Thank you very much, everybody.